Good morning and welcome to the lecture The Participatory Approach. In the previous class, we discussed about various approaches like normative approach, phenomenological approach, logical positivist approach, etc. So, what is logical positivist approach? It is a approach on public policy analysis based on empirical or verifiable data analysis or verification of data, experience, observation. These are the methods used to analyze public policy. So that is empirical method or logical positivist approach. Then uh, phenomenological approach. Phenomenological approach means um, a study based on uh, deep intuition into the problem, some kind of interaction with the respondents, and we get much deeper knowledge or information from the field. That kind of a extra uh, experimental experienced analysis, which we called as what uh, phenomenological approach or post-positivism. Then what is normativism? Normativism is based on value-based approach. So here, what is participatory approach? Simply, participatory approach means what consider the role of policy actors, their opinions, uh, their feedback, their interaction, and uh, beneficiaries. Beneficiaries feedback means the uh, policymakers. In addition to the role of policymakers, also consider the role of the affected people, means the citizens. So it consider the participation of all policy stakeholders. That kind of approach is called participatory approach. So participatory approach emerged in a period of 1980s with the dissatisfaction over the existing approaches like normative approach or scientific approaches like empiricism. Uh, that means logical positivist approach or approaches like uh, phenomenological approach, etc. So, in this context, these approaches like phenomenological approach or normative approach or empirical approach were considered as only traditional approach. Traditional approach. These approaches are closely related with the system analysis and various other models. So, in this context, we consider the policy analyst when they uh, began to deal with uh, participatory approach. They consider the existing approaches as traditional approaches. That is the starting point here. So the application of traditional system analytical methods to complex societal and policy problems was not always very helpful. So the traditional or existing approaches were not helpful to understand or analyze very complex societal issues. Then problems validation arose because of the absence of adequate social scientific theories and empirical data. Moreover, the policy relevance was questioned because policy actors had difficulty in understanding and using the formal models in policy practice. The system's analytic models provided partial insights and solutions for policy problems, which were not automatically acceptable and suitable for actors responsible for policy implementation. So, um, when they realize that all these existing approaches are not adequate, they are scientifically, rationally may be correct, but um we need more relevant, more reliable analysis. So, uh, a analysis, an analysis based on uh, participation from the all stakeholders of policy making process. Then we get more uh, clear data, more clear information regarding public policy. So that kind of approach we can simply understand as what participatory approach. During 1980s, system analysts realized that much of the understanding of the problem is generated in the process of model building. Participation of the policy actors. Here, policy actors means policy makers, decision makers, like every parts of decision making system, every actors, every bureaucrats, administrators, political leaders, political leadership, chief ministers, like every means council of ministers, like every administrative parts which are closely related with the decision making system. They are totally collectively called as policy actors. So, participation of the policy actors in the building process could therefore be useful. The participation of policy actors should enable the analyst to enrich the model by including subjective sources of knowledge in addition to the objective knowledge derived from theories and empirical studies. So, in the existing by using existing empirical studies, only the analyst only get objective knowledge based on objective ideas. So here, additionally, the communication between analyst and policy actors on the complex problem could be improved. By the way, the analyst will get very subjective knowledge related to the problem. As a consequence, participatory policy modeling became developed in 1980s. After 1980s, besides, in addition to the participative modeling, many other practical tools of participatory policy analysis like simulations. Simulations means that when we analyze something, we can recreate the same uh, um situations to analyze easily as a model. So here simulations is an approach. Consensus conferences and computer-based group decision support system are implemented. Consequently, the same tool is often described more than once under different names, and similar tools are reinvented. So, participatory policy analysis. Participatory policy analysis means the aim of policy analysis. Simply what the objective of policy analysis is to produce and transform policy relevant information so that it may be utilized in political settings to resolve policy problems. So, to make changes in accordance with the demands of the public, uh, the decision makers depends upon the analysis. So, public policy analysis helps the decision makers to make the necessary changes of the policy. So, here the aim of policy analysis is generally what to produce and transform policy relevant information to the political setting. So, here uh, we can also see participatory. So, what is participatory? Participatory refers to the greater involvement in policy analysis of those who affect, means the policy makers or the policy actors, or policy actors include all the stakeholders. So, policy actors uh, and and on the other side, the affected people means the public means the those who affected by a policy problem, sometimes policy problem. So when government make a law or a decision or a policy, uh, sometimes the decisions or the policies may create some issues. So in that sense here we got that a kind of problem, policy problem. Okay. One of the earliest application of participatory policy analysis was developed by Harold Laswell in 1960, who propagated the idea of decision seminars as part of the participatory approach. It's a tool developed by Harold Laswell. Decision seminars to make opinions, to enhance or raise opinions of the public. They conducted decision seminars, like tools were used, and Mason and Metro uh, developed the assumption challenging approach, and Inc and Hart contributed to the emergence of the structured workshops code. Other initiatives can be found in the applications of action research and community self-surveys. So, action research is a kind of research conducted by um, uh, a, an agency or a government authority to uh, uh, to understand the environment in which the policy began to apply. So, action research and sometimes community self surveys are helpful to enhance the policy making system. So, these are considered as the tools of participatory policy analysis. The application of participatory methods to strategic questions of private organization developed much faster than the application to policy questions of public agencies. So that time, private agencies were more oriented towards the application of these participatory methods in their work than the government sector. Why participatory policy analysis? So the traditional type of policy analysis has been strongly influenced by approach based on distinction between science and policy. Scientific analysis, and one of the main assumption is that the policy analyst produces scientifically valid knowledge which helps policymakers to solve policy problems. Later, the traditional type of policy analysis means the existing policy approaches were criticized by policy analysts and argued for a participatory type of policy analysis. The arguments can be ordered along two lines. First is formal model, and second is the need for social interaction in order to be able to change current policies. So we can move to the formal modeling. Originally, formal modeling techniques were used in different but related research disciplines such as system analysis, system dynamics, and operational research. It also emphasizes the contribution of scientific knowledge to policy making. It is similar to the mainstream policy analysis, which assumes that the knowledge should be scientific and that decision making is rational, top down, and unicentric. So, in the existing analysis system, all policies are coming from a central point. So it is a unicentric decision making system is a unicentric. So all power is vested in a point where the government, they are the authoritative body, they will make laws. So it's a unicentric process. And here when we analyze this system, we make scientific tools, we apply rational rational logical skill to understand the policy problems here. So that was the formal modeling system, that is the existing techniques. Policymakers decisions are dependent on many factors other than the variables that can be dealt with in formal mathematical model. So it is like a mathematical model. The formal modeling perspective ignores, but it ignores to some extent the political setting in which policy making is taking place. But they ignores the role of political setting. And furthermore, it argues that a mathematical model is not necessarily the ultimate goal. Increasingly, models are seen to have different and more subtle role as instruments to support strategic thinking, group discussions, and learning in management teams. So there is a lot of possibilities are there. While considering an analysis, we can also include the role of group discussions, strategic thinking by various decision making authorities, actors, but this scientific technique or an approach based on mathematical tools is ignoring these kind of role of the interference of these factors. So that is a drawback of this formal modeling. Second, the need for social interaction. So here we need the need of we must consider the need of social interaction. So in addition to the changing definition of knowledge, knowledge is changing phenomena. So in addition to the changing definition of knowledge from scientific oriented to consensus oriented, it became clear that inadequate communication between policy analysts and policy actors was one of the reasons for the limited impact of policy analysis on policy making. It was argued that the relation between the policy analyst, his client, citizens, and the stakeholders should be redefined. So, till then, only the role of decision makers were considered for analysis, but there must be we must consider the role of other means the clients, citizens, and the stakeholders. So the relation between the policy analyst, his client, citizens, and the stakeholders should be redefined. From the perspective of policy scientists, they say that participation of citizens and stakeholders in policy analytic process is necessary for reasons for democracy. For in a democratic world, um, role of the other people in policy making is very important. So consequently, the policy analyst no longer should function as an external or neutral expert who avoids interfering with the research subject as much as possible. So when the policy analyst find the role of the stakeholders like policy actors, citizens, etc., they they are not the final or the last words of this analysis. There may be a chance for further research. There may be interference from the other policy actors. So the policy analyst should organize and facilitate participation in policy analysis of non-scientific experts, citizens, users, and other policy actors. This changing view on the role of policy analyst from an expert to policy advisor who facilitates social interaction is in agreement with the theoretical perspective of policy learning. In policy learning, it is assumed that the policy models are developed, tested, and shaped by means of reflective policy dialogue. So the dialogue enables policy actors to learn individually as well as a group. Instead of the term dialogue, Duke introduced the term multilogue. So uh, it's a plural. No dialogue between uh, two streams or two actors or a two set of actors. It's a dialogue between multi set of actors. So it is called as multilogue to refer to a conversation between multiple actors. In a multilogue, people are involved simultaneously in a process of sense making, which could not have been possible by speaking to each individual actor separately. The role of the policy analyst is to facilitate this multilogue between the policy actors. Participative style of policy making. So, in addition to the formal modeling and social interaction, participation is also needed for a good kind of analysis. The use of the participatory type of policy analysis is also being stimulated by the increasing emergence of participative style of policy making. Participation as a style for policy making has long and much debated history. Participation both in the public and the private sector reached a temporary peak in 1960s and early in 1970s as a part of overall movement in Western society towards democratization. After the mid 1970s, participation as a means for democratization became less popular. However, as a reaction to the fall of strategic planning, private organizations discovered participation as an effective means of developing policy in the complex networks surrounding them. In the public sector, the public officials also became increasingly interested in interactive policy development in order to be able to deal with ineffective governmental policies. In the public sector, it was argued that governmental policies were ineffective because of the underlying traditional governance concept. The concept of policy network is used to refer to the interdependent relation between actors that are involved in policy making regarding a policy problem. In a policy network, government or even one of the other actors can play an initiating role in order to facilitate interactive policy making. The traditional role of government as the single decision maker is changed into the role of broker or facilitator of policy making. Basic assumptions of participatory policy analysis. So, participatory policy analysis should be applicable to all kinds of complex problems. Complex problems are policy issues and strategic questions which arise in intra-organizational or inter-organizational settings in which many actors with different perceptions and different interests are involved. So it's a multi-world where so much interest is coming and with different perceptions and different interests are involved. So we assume that for different kind of policy problems, different kind of policy analytic trajectories are needed. Depending on the specific circumstances, more quantitative formal methods sometimes needed or more qualitative intuitive methods like phenomenological methods should be chosen. Additionally, the environment or the context of a policy issue should be analyzed to provide suggestions about how to organize and facilitate participation in policy analysis. The context as perceived by the initiator of participatory policy analysis, the client of the policy analyst, is especially important. His strategic needs and position in the policy network influences the participatory methods that can be adopted, the specific trajectories that are chosen, and the actors that are willing to participate. The interventions of the policy analyst are part of a participatory policy trajectory or a line of policy analysis. A trajectory consists of many decisions regarding design and implementation of participatory methods of policy analysis. In fact, each step in a participatory policy trajectory involves many design decisions: timing, number of participants, subject matter, tools, forum formats, procedures for presenting and integrating information, etc. So the participatory policy analysis trajectories consist of tools, processes, and recipes, all of which have to support some criteria. For example, when government implemented a policy in related to an issue, means for example a decision in related to education policy. So to make a policy analysis on that policy, the policy analyst must consider the role of uh, the decision makers and the stakeholders. The educational means the field, in the field there will be students, teachers, office staff who are working in education field. So they are the they will be the affected people of this policy. So they are the stakeholders. So to analyze it, they must create a design. In this design, uh, they will they will be conscious of timing or number of how much of participants should be incorporated, or what subject matter should be discussed, or what kind of tools should be used, and what formats in what format the discussions will be conducted, or how what kind of procedure should be used. So that kind of trajectories, a line of uh, assessment is here. So generally, uh, the design criteria for public participatory policy analysis trajectories include: first one, effectiveness. The trajectory has to support the problem solving around the issue at hand. So the focus, every focus uh, will be clear. So it will make an effective analysis of that problem. So uh, the trajectory has to support the problem solving around the issue at hand. And secondly, consistency. Each element in policy analysis trajectory has to fit into the overall pattern that leads to the goal selected. Thirdly, integrality. All parameters of choice are taken into account. And fourthly, efficiency. All elements of the trajectory should contribute to the goal. And fifth, realizability. The cost of participation are acceptable to the participants. And finally, flexibility. Possible to adapt the trajectory to new developments. For participatory methods for policy analysis, Gertz and Wennix derived four analytic and four process criteria respectively. So, the 4 points given in yellow are the four analytic criteria, and the points given in blue are the process criteria. So, in the analytic criteria, the analysis should be decision oriented and stimulate broad framing of the policy problem. If the policy analyst selected a policy to analyze, so uh, the analysis should be decision oriented, based on the decision made by the government, and their analysis should stimulate the broad framing of the policy problem. That is the first analytical criteria. Second one, a broad overview of available scientific insights should be developed. So they must develop uh, a broad overview of available scientific insights related to the problem. And thirdly, policy options should be developed which are creatively different, relevant, and internally consistent. So, while analyzing the problem, they developed some options. Developed some alternatives, or some they suggested some changes. So that changes must be creatively different or relevant and internally consistent. It should be internally consistent. And fourthly, the method should allow the derivation of logically undisputable statements. So the statements or the method, uh, um, logically undisputable statements should be derived from this analysis. That is the fourth point. Here, in the process criteria, the method should allow step-by-step learning, and the method should allow participation of the relevant stakeholders, and should facilitate communication in which the judgments of the experts and stakeholders are taken into account. And finally, the method should allow the integration of scientific data and judgments of experts and stakeholders. So, participatory approaches, and their application. The application of participatory policy analytic methods offers participants opportunities for experimenting with policy in safe environment. Participants take part in a policy exercise. They engage in a structured debate in order to clarify goals and generate and evaluate policy alternatives. Additionally, procedures for communication are developed as well as a physical and social environment in which the communication amongst participants take place. Finally, specific tools will be chosen in order to integrate the different mental models of participants or to generate realistic alternatives. The debate results in visible outcomes such as policy documents as well as invisible outcomes such as increased understanding, consensus, or commitment. So this is the source of this lecture, and go through the slides and listen carefully and ask your doubts. Thank you.